of further petitions, the next of which is petition number 1916, a request a public inquiry into the management of the Rest and Be Thankful project, which has been lodged by councillors Douglas Filland and Donald Kelly. The petition calls on the Scottish Parliament to urge the Scottish Government to instigate a public inquiry regarding the political and financial management of the A83 Rest and Be Thankful project, which is to provide a permanent solution for the route. This is obviously a cause célèbre with which the committee is familiar, or having discussed this in various petitions over a considerable period of time, as has no doubt Jackie Baillie, who also joins the committee's proceedings this morning. Welcome to Ms Baillie. We last considered this on the 9th of November, and again we agreed to write to the Scottish Government, and we've since received a response from Transport Scotland, which indicated that potential route designs for a permanent solution are being progressed with an expectation that a preferred route option would be announced by spring 2023. I did read, by way of a sort of aside, a novel recently where somebody said Stockholm does spring very nicely, to which the riposte was, yes, but in July. But I'm hoping that since we are getting nearer July, it may well be that a Scottish spring is now defined as what we used to call the summer. But here we are. Transport Scotland's response also notes that the preferred medium-term solution for improvements to the existing old military road, which was announced in December 2022, which I remember visiting on along with David Torrance on a previous committee consideration of a petition a number of years ago. We've also received a submission from the petitioners highlighting concerns that improvements to the old military road may delay progress in a permanent solution. As I recall, when you get to the end of the old military road, you're confronted with quite a tricky topographical consideration, and it's very steep and windy. As well as seeking information on Transport Scotland's timetable for progressing a permanent solution. Now, before I open up to wider comments, I'm delighted to ask if Jackie Baillie has got anything she would like to contribute at this stage. Probably perplexed as I am, Ms Baillie, at the definition of spring.
Good morning, Convener. I am indeed perplexed at the definition of spring. Spring 2023, I think, has now passed, and we are ever hopeful, but I am assuming that we are now entering summer. Now, I recognise, as do the petitioners, there's a new minister in place, there are tight budgets, but, you know, the petitioners and indeed the entire area are keen to know whether there's been any slippage and what the timetable is for identifying a preferred solution and when that road will eventually be built. So the local aspiration, understandably, is that it should be built by 2026. The last Scottish Government official opined about this, they were saying 2033. Clearly, there's a significant difference. So we are keen to understand what's going on. Petitioners are keen for an indication of the timetable, if there has been any slippage, the magnitude of that slippage. And they are slightly sceptical, it has to be said, that the investment in the old military road, whilst welcome, is going to be a sticking plaster approach because the permanent solution is not identified and progressed in good time. So what we have is more money being spent on a project that has consumed vast amounts of public money over the years without a permanent solution being in place. And let me, and whilst I understand that the committee may not be entirely in favour of a public inquiry, let me explain that the petitioners, you know, the core of this petition was their request for a public inquiry because they don't think there's value for money being achieved. So we have a solution in place that's a temporary solution at the Rest and Be Thankful, which involves catch pits. Those catch pits started off being quoted as about 2 to 3 million, is now over 100 million. There's no permanent solution in place. There's going to be investment in the old military road, which is sticking plaster. When is this ever going to end? And we would like a date for, one, the preferred choice, two, when it's actually going to be built and completed, and what the slippage is. And I recognise that there is a new minister, but I do think this has gone on for long enough.
Thank you, Ms Baillie. I think that's reasonable. I mean, by 2033, even you and I might have retired along with other members of the committee. Well, I find that increasingly hard to do these days, but I do still try. So, I mean, I think in this occasion, David Torrance, do you have any suggestions we might make? I mean, it seems perfectly reasonable, I think, to try and find out where we stand, given that we were given an understanding we would have heard something by now.
I think, Convener, as someone along with yourself who has visited the area and seen the measures that were put in place, I think we need to take this forward. It's been going on far too long. And there is still officially 14 days of spring left, just to let you know. But I don't think a report will be done at that time.
We could certainly make reference to that in any submission that we make. We don't want another broken promise, after all.
Can I make the suggestion? We write to Minister for Transport to seek an update on when the Scottish Government expects to announce a preferred route option for a permanent solution.
Yeah. Are we agreed? Are you agreeing, Mr Young, or you wanted to comment?
Well, I was agreeing. I was just going to ask that we ask for some supplementary information, if I may.
You please do.
Because I've just read in the papers the petitioner's submission of the 14th of March, headed "Concerns voiced to me. If the old military road improvements work, will this kick the permanent solution into long grass?" I think that's been mentioned, but what I don't think has been mentioned that the selection criteria for the medium-term solution did not consider ensuring we have a two-way road which stays open when it rains and is free from traffic lights, road closures and convoys, a fundamental requirement of the people who actually use the road, and we would assume is the role for which Transport Scotland exists. So I just read that into the record, because these are the petitioner's concerns, and our job is in part, I think, to get not only a general response from the Minister, but also a specific response to what appear to me to be legitimate points that the petitioners have raised.
Yep. Thank you very much. Are we agreed? Agreed. We are. Thank you. Next